Welcome to the Predictable Revenue Podcast, where sales leaders teach you what's working for them and how you can build it yourself.
This episode of the Predictable Revenue Podcast is brought to you by our sales coaching and consulting services. Are you looking to create repeatable, scalable, and predictable revenue? We've helped thousands of companies grow their business with tailored expert advice backed by testing to ensure they establish the best practices that'll work for them. Head over to bit.ly/predictable revenue coaching to learn more.
Hey everybody, this is Collin from Predictable Revenue. Today I've got a super exciting episode for you. I just spent, hour talking with Ted Blosser about go-to-market fit versus product market fit. Now, if you're in sales and you're going, why is Collin throwing all these acronyms at me? It's because I spent 10 years as an AE of various different types before I started PR. And I always remember the difference of working for a company that had, I didn't know the words back then, but really strong product market fit versus really, really weak product market fit. And I think I always blame myself. And so I thought this was a really important episode to get on the show because it adds so much context. If a company you're working for has extreme product market fit, it's going to make you look like the greatest salesperson in the whole world. If your company is struggling with product market fit, it's going to make everything harder. If you've ever been a first AE, or if you've ever considered or had a desire to be the first account executive for a new tech company, this is the episode for you to listen to. If you're a founder trying to figure out how to grow that first sales team, this is the episode for you. If you're an AE or a sales development rep that's working and trying to figure out go-to-market fit and try and figure out where other people have stumbled so you can make different mistakes, this is the episode for you. We talked about definitions, go-to-market fit, product market fit. We talked about some product mistakes and how he got to the right product eventually. We talked about some stumbles with their outbound sales team the first time they did it. And they made one, as Ted will say, critical error around outsourcing their outbound that he did differently the next time that helped unlock the actual go-to-market fit for him. We talked a little bit about who to hire as an AE and some stumbles they had through the process. And so if that sounds like an awesome things that you want to hear about, here's the episode. Talk to you soon. Happy to have you on and really looking forward to our conversation. Welcome.
Excited to be here, Collin. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Thanks for coming on. I've spent 10 years as a salesperson before I started a company that's focused on helping people build sales development teams. Spent a lot of time thinking about the sort of intersection between product market fit and go-to-market. And so I'm curious, the thing I'm excited about is to hear your sort of product market, go-to-market story. I'd love how maybe if we could start by talking about maybe get some definitions, because this is definitely more of a sales leaning podcast. And this is going to be one of those, audience, we're going to take a step back and look at what are some of the higher level things that might be impacting a sales motion, a marketing motion, those kinds of things. So before we jump into the meat and potatoes, can you talk to me about your definitions around go-to-market fit? Like what do you see that, or how do you see that? And what is product market fit?
Yeah, for sure. Usually I would define product market fit, and there's the age-old question is, hey, what is product market fit? And usually you would have a product market fit and then a go-to-market fit. And for me personally, product market fit is, hey, I think Pina Reinhardt from Segment talked a lot about this, is people are pulling your product into their environment versus you're pushing it and wishing and hoping they will take it. And that's probably the best analogy I've heard. And he talks a lot about when he was building Segment, how his first product, I think, is an educational product for teachers, just no one was pulling it. He releases a small part of Segment and everyone was pulling it into their own environment. And so that's kind of how I would define the product market fit portion. And then when you get there, it's like, all right, let's say we have something someone's pulling. What is the go-to-market fit, which is really about, are we selling this product to the right buyer consistently and in a repeatable way? And sometimes this happens at the same time for companies. Sometimes you've always kind of had product market fit and it takes a while to get go-to-market fit. And so for us, it was actually more the latter. It's like we actually had product market fit kind of right below our noses, but it took us a while to figure that out, that, hey, we actually had the right product. but we needed to get the go-to-market motion down to really accelerate the business. And so that was a little bit more unique in our story. I would say more founders that I've seen have the two happen roughly around the same time.
Was it a case of you had the right product and just didn't have the market dialed in, or you had the product in the market and just couldn't figure out a path to revenue or path to finding how to attract more customers?
Yeah, so for us, and to give some background for the audience, so we're an all-in-one learning management system. So if you've ever been in this category, it's actually a 25-year-old category. It's well defined, and we were essentially refreshing the category. And so the product market fit wasn't the difficult part, because you could literally go sign up to a competitor's site, understand exactly what this market looks like, and then really your incremental improvement is like a 25-50% improvement on top of that. And maybe you go to market in a different way with your product. And so for us, we had always known like, hey, we understand the general, let's call it goalposts on the product, and we just kept developing there. And that wasn't hard for us. And I had a sales and product background. My co-founder had a product background. But then what we did was we said, hey, how do we actually get this to market in a unique way? And that was the hard part. Like, I'll give an example where about a year and a half into the company. So we were founded in 2015, and this is roughly late 2016 after we went through Y Combinator, where at one point we were selling to a trucking company in Chicago, a nursing home in Vermont, another, it was actually a biking tourist company in Ecuador, and at the same time selling to Square's sales team in SF. And in one day I would have 4 sales calls like that, and all selling the same product. And the hard part was I couldn't figure out like, hey, what was our target market? And I was experimenting, thinking there was other opportunities in these other sectors of the market. And essentially what I had to come back to was, hey, we have the product figured out, but we need to really hone in on this go-to-market fit from here.
No, how do you get in the same motion? Cycle touring company from Ecuador, these other random niches, and then Square sales team. What did go-to-market look like at that point? Was it just founder network? Was it inbound? Did you have like a hot air balloon that just dropped customers on you?
Yeah, those early days were really interesting. It's actually, we're bringing up these conversations again in this downturn about, hey, what's the AE's role now in doing things like building pipeline? And I was just in a forecast meeting, a pipeline meeting, pipeline generation meeting yesterday with our sales leaders. And I was talking about, hey, back in the day, back in 2016, as a founder, it's just me and my co-founder, I would just do what I call LinkedIn days. I would just sit on LinkedIn for a full day, just 8 to 5, book my calendar, and just send off a bunch of warm messages in network. And usually as a founder, you're usually about 1 to 2 steps away from the right intro into a company. And so at that time, when I would do those LinkedIn days, I would essentially say, hey, can you provide me an intro into the enablement persona? And that was one of our initial target buyers, as an example. And I would spend the whole day just sending off these messages. And it wasn't a big ask. It was like, hey, can you just get me an intro to this person? Like, very nicely asking that. And in one day, I would say if I would sit down in any given day, I could probably generate, and we were still small beans at that time, probably 100, 200K of pipeline a day. And I was bringing this story up back to our team now, to current day. And I was saying, look, we don't even have really outbound goals for our AEs. Let's go, and this could be a whole nother conversation. I think we're moving into a world where AEs are going to not just have, obviously, quota attainment goals and pipeline goals from the rest of the company. They're now going to, like, almost every team should have an AE outbound goal. But again, that was what it was like in the early days, was personal network. I would say our first 50 customers were all personal network. And then from there, referral came in. I would call it 50 to 100 customers. And after 100, it was more around actually getting some of the regular marketing motions going.
Love that. I love the LinkedIn intro days. That is, I mean, that's how I got this started as well. I started a little bit longer before you, I think 2012, and I got banned from LinkedIn for sending too many of those. I was probably going a little bit more cold than you were. I didn't go through YC, so my network wasn't as strong back in
Yeah.
2012. But yeah, it's super interesting. I'm curious, just if we could sidebar on this, and I promise listeners, I'm not going to try and turn this into a sales call. I do think Ted should buy some sales development from us, but that's aside. It's not what this podcast is for. That would be a genius if this was what the podcast was for. But what do you have sales development reps? Do you have an outbound team that's booking meetings for you all?
Yeah, we do. We have we internally, or everyone's nomenclature is a little bit differently. Our BDRs are our outbound sales reps, our SDRs are inbound sales reps. And it's a motion that we actually built the back of the company on, which is also a little bit, let's say, against the norm of most venture-backed startups, where we actually started with outbound first to actually build up our client base, and then actually roped around and made it more of an inbound motion later. Whereas a lot of my peers were doing the reverse, where they were actually building up a lot of inbound, cracked the inbound channels, and then came back and added outbound channels to that. But it's been a big part of our strategy.
Interesting. See, I'm an outbound person. Like, as a salesperson, there was no such thing as outbound when I was a salesperson. It was, you're a salesperson, you're a full cycle sales rep. You have a quota, go hit that quota. I'm like, what are meetings? They're like, go do your own, find your own meetings. And so my default is outbound. The thing I love about outbound as a founder and as that first channel is almost instant feedback. Whereas inbound, it takes so long to build up that content to find this. I find, for me, my stress is like the cycle time on inbound. If you were trying to identify and validate a market like you all were, to try and do that with inbound is like crazy hard cycle times.
Totally. Actually, you bring up a good point. I didn't even think about this. When we talked about those early days, when I had those 4 different types of clients, right, all over the globe, a lot of that, actually, now thinking about it, the outbound of those 4 clients I talked about, only one was outbound, which was Square, getting immediate feedback. And that ended up being our go-to-market fit, companies like Square. But what was those other 3, the nursing home, the trucking company, the bike tourist company, those were actually inbound off of what I call empty calories. We were using a service called Capterra. And again, this is kind of cheating on inbound, where you could pay, they essentially are a way that you can hijack SEO and get ranked to the top of the list. And we would basically hijack their SEO rankings, get ranked at the top, and have that come inbound. But that's a great point. I never actually put 2 and 2 together. Probably a big reason we were having such slow feedback cycles on that is those were coming inbound from our forced paid campaigns, whereas the one that was a target market fit was us going outbound. So great analysis there.
Take it, Brian. He's the founder of HubSpot. He always, whenever we're at SaaStr, he walks by our booth and gives us the finger. Big smile on his face. So I'm like, see, Brian, outbound is better than inbound when you're getting started.
That's right.
Now I've settled the score. I'm better than Brian. Yeah. I have one piece I wanted to add to the conversation, because I agree. I love that you have outbound reps. I totally agree I love the fact that you were doing LinkedIn outro or outbound as the founder. I think super smart. I wish more founders would do that instead of trying to build a sales development team first. So I just wanted to highlight that. Love it.
And we messed that up a couple of times too. Tell you more stories about that.
We will come back to that. The point I was going to make was on the teams that have an outbound team. And if you are a full cycle rep, the responsibility of your quota is always falling on you. So it's amazing if you've got a sales development team to support you, but I didn't get enough meetings from my SDR should never be an excuse that you allow yourself to use. And it might be a reason or a diagnosis of why a team is not performing, but as an AE, it shouldn't, never let that be an excuse, because your quota is yours. You own that. And the reps that really succeed take ownership over that. Just like Ted didn't have a quota, but his goal was to get the company started, and he sat on LinkedIn and powered through it. And I'm sure they weren't the most fun days, but it got you here.
You're spot on. Actually, I was going to pull up a post literally today. I think Manny Medina I don't know if you saw that already, wrote this post about, hey, the era of the full stack AE is back. You are generating your own pipeline, you are closing it because all the pipeline numbers are down across tech. And we're going to be expected to generate a good portion of our own pipeline. And I actually copy and pasted it out to our e-staff because we're doing this thing internally right now called WorkRamp 2.0. And there's a lot of this change that has happened recently in the market is that, hey, we need to go on the offensive. We can't just curl up in a ball and hope this downturn passes us. We need to change things up, release new products, try new processes. And a big part of this actually is instilling this new culture of, hey, kind of a quote unquote, eat what you kill type of culture where it's, hey, you can't just rely on your BDRs and inbound anymore, which is what everybody was living on the last 3 to 4 years, right? You have to actually go out and go get it yourself and be I think Manny called it the CEO of your own territory.
100%. It's coming back to, I don't want to say old school, but I think that's just the old school ownership. I smiled when you mentioned Manny, because to me, it's so 100% agree with Manny. It's the best article for a guy like Manny to write because it's one, accurate and true. Two, it's a sales pitch to you saying, Ted, all your reps, not just your BDRs, all your AEs need outreach as well.
Yes, that is right. It is minorly self-serving, but also true.
It's the perfect piece of content for Manny to write.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, you mentioned you had some stumbles with outbound yourself or LinkedIn in the early days. Tell me about those.
Yeah, those were really interesting. And so in the early days, I was doing that outbound, and then we said, you know what, let's go try to go do this ourselves. And we made two big mistakes or two big phases of mistakes. And then we got it on the third try. So the first mistake was, in this, I actually believe in the model, but we just executed it wrong. We outsourced outbound, and we outsourced it to basically a side hustle of our marketing team. And we didn't really pay attention to it that much. We did the firm was actually pretty good. We had used them at Box. I came previously from Box and it worked there, but just did not work for us at all. It was like we had a 0% conversion rate by using them for about 6 to 8 months on the actual pipeline. Lots of pipeline, but what we messed up was we didn't take it as a first-class citizen. We didn't go sit with the outsourced team. We didn't put nearly enough training with them. And so that program, especially when you're seed funded, we were just throwing away money by not paying attention to it. And I don't know if you want to comment on that. I could go to the next mess up.
No, I've never had this experience in my entire life.
Yeah, you probably see it all the time. Yeah.
I think it's one of the worst things companies can do, because you're not only wasting your time and money, but you're wasting our time and money.
Yes.
For those listening, we also run a similar service. I see this so many times where the executive or executive sponsor or a VP comes in and says, we need this. And oftentimes it's the founder. And then, 2 weeks later, the founder's like, I'm too busy, and pulling out of the calls. And you're like, well, based on the information, now you've outsourced and I'll articulate the problem that I think that what happened, or the diagnosis of what happened, and why, to parrot what you said, was you outsourced the go-to-market strategy to an outsourced firm that didn't understand your account, contact, customer pain.
Yep.
And you can't outsource the strategy. You can absolutely outsource the execution. And I think an outsourced team in a case like this, where you don't have all the fractional resources, you don't have a RevOps person, you don't have a sales development manager, you don't have all these people that know and have done it before, can be a great way to get a little leverage in the early days. But if you outsource the strategy, you're just wasting your money.
Yeah. And looking back on it now, I haven't thought about it in a while. I didn't sit on one meeting with the firm we had outsourced with. And that just shows you hey, I try to outsource it internally to someone else, and then they try to outsource it again to the firm. And it wasn't just even the strategy part. If I could have done it all over again, I've seen it work really well. As I mentioned before, I would have not only been on those meetings themselves, I would have been in the execution day to day if we actually want to make it successful. Because I would list, I would actually look at their results. They would generate meetings, and it was just like they were just generating the wrong meetings because we weren't giving them the guidance, but the effectiveness was there. We just weren't pointing them in the right direction. And we had some other stuff to figure out in the business itself at that time, but still it could have been way more successful in that first go around.
And I think this is the maybe we're dancing around the line between product market fit and go to market fit. Because arguably you had a product that you were selling at this time. You had customers, you had people coming to you, but this outbound team, that poor SDR who's sitting there going like, I'm booking all these meetings, and your marketing team is like, well, they're garbage.
Yeah.
That poor SDR put so much time and effort into this engagement, and they're like, these people don't have product market fit.
Yeah, totally. And yeah, there was definitely some of that because we weren't even pointing them in the right direction at all. Like we were getting Fortune 500 companies all the way to 50-person startups, and there was a huge range of those target clients. So, and then that second mess up was really then we tried to bring it in-house. Mm-hmm. And so we bring it in-house. And I would say the biggest mistake we made at that time is we didn't fully commit to bringing it in-house. We basically did onesie, twosie hires. And so we still kind of kept it as a side hustle of the marketing team. And those two things combined, where we essentially had two BDRs reporting someone who's never done this before and not making the full commitment on it investment wise, then it failed again. It was like, wait, they're still not getting any meetings. Even at that time, we had a little bit better go-to-market fit. And the mistake we made at that time was like literally not getting a dedicated BDR leader or outbound leader to actually run this function for real and investing in it. Like you needed a team. I think when we hit a critical mass, about 6 people was when we actually had a legitimate organization that actually knew what they were doing. We got them the right tooling, had the right leader. We had this guy, Mikey Powell, who's been amazing, and he's still at the company, and he reworked the whole program on our third try. So our third try finally worked. And that was when everything went off to the races. And even people from that original team are some of our best AEs today.
Oh, hands down. Anybody that was an all-star on our SDR team turned out to be an all-star on the AE team. And I'd love your point on once you got to that critical mass of 6 kind of reps, because now you can, it's hard to justify having an SDR manager for 1 rep, right? Like a one-to-one manager to SDR relationship just doesn't make sense in a spreadsheet. You want to amortize the cost of that manager over a number of reps. There's also an investment in sales ops and sales tools and data and enablement and training and onboarding and all these investments that need to make. And hiring one SDR and have them roll up to marketing or an AE or a sales manager is sort of like buying skis, going to the hill in your jeans in the middle of winter and not taking lessons and just like, I'm going to go up the hill and see what happens. And some people certainly ski down. But other people show up at the top, they get to the top and you're like, why am I naked with ski boots on? This is not going to be fun.
Yes. That's a great analogy. And that's exactly what happened until we fully committed. Right. And sometimes as a early stage founder, you're kind of taught to just run experiments, right? It's like, oh yeah, I could like just put a little bit out there. Let's see what happens. That's how you would maybe build product, but it's really hard to do it with something that actually requires human capital to do it correctly.
Totally. I think it's the one argument for one really good argument for outsourcing your BDR or team when you can't afford all of that infrastructure.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Again, as long as you're not going to outsource the strategy element, which is super critical. So we've talked a little bit about some of the go-to-market motions. How did you talk to me about, maybe if we take a step back, how did you know the product was there, and how did you talk to me about the process of getting to the product? I guess we're talking about, for those listening, WorkRamp, it's an LMS, learning management system. This isn't a new category you created. Obviously, there was some sort of niche that you carved out because LMSs have been around for a long time. So talk to me about how you found this particular niche that WorkRamp sits in right now. Yeah,
for sure. So when we started in 2015, my co-founder and I, so we both came from Box. we said, hey, look, we have two criteria. This actually sounds more like the Twilio founding story a little bit, where our two criteria were, number one, we want to build an awesome company with a great culture. And so we just loved working at Box. A lot of people don't know that it's just amazing culture and place to work. It's not like everyone gets out of bed every morning, file sharing, but just showing up at work was just so fun. It reminded me a little bit of like high school or college, where it's just like, hey, you just enjoy, or for most people, you just enjoy going there, interacting with people, doing great work, right? Or in high school and college, doing a little bit of studying and social life. And so that was criteria number one. Criteria number two, which is a little more unique to us, because you usually hear founding stories like, oh, my parents were professors or had this really amazing educational experience. For us, we actually did not know much about the learning category, but we were essentially saying, hey, we want to look for very large categories and that are not disrupted yet. And so in 2015, there's a lot of SaaS tools coming out. And this was the perfect market. When we looked at learning, it was very large of a category. It was a very large category. The TAM was almost infinite. If you think about it, everyone in the world who does a job needs to learn in some capacity. So that checked that box. And then for us, then we looked at the competitors, and the competitors were just really awful. And what was good about this category is everyone ignored it or thought it was they kind of left it for the dead. Where if you look at VCs, there was no VC money going into this, so it wasn't highly competitive. And the best competitor was probably Cornerstone, which was founded in 99. And so for us, it was like, all right, huge category, undisrupted space that we can make an impact in. And then let's go build a great company in this category. So that's how we got started. And then it just came about us just looking at first principles, like, hey, what do the products look like in the market? What are customers asking for? And then how can we innovate using the technologies of 2015? Now it seems like a long time ago versus the early 2000s. So like you can do things like integrations now, have a mobile interface, use some of the cutting edge front-end technologies for a much better web experience.
Backbone or
exactly.
JavaScript
like it was,
framework.
And literally the funniest story is I coded the first version of the site myself because I had a little bit of a development background. So I built it on Rails. And then my co-founder is a real engineer from Box. And when he was ready to go, when I recruited him on board, he rewrote the application in 2 weeks. And then we sold it for our second contract for $50,000 and per year. And we're like, whoa, that's crazy. But off a 2-week-old prototype, and that shows you how fast we could move with the new technologies available to us. That it literally in a 2-week build, we could actually go sell an actual product to a customer.
Gotcha. So did you guys move off Rails entirely, or?
No, we actually technically stayed on Rails. It actually still have a soft spot in my heart for Rails. But when new engineers come on board, when I do like new hire onboarding, they're like, why are we on Rails? It was because that was the only server-side language I knew.
Yeah, so that's fair. I mean, it's still, I think there was a lot of like, especially 2015, there was a lot of new hotness around. And it was very easy to go chasing.
Yes, that's right. And to circle back to your original questions, then that was how we chose, hey, let's get into this market. And then it was the journey from, all right, we know what market we're in. And then that's why I would say, hey, we kind of got the product market fit first. Then it was a journey about getting the go-to-market fit. And that took a much longer time for us. And we always felt comfortable in the product.
So you didn't just jump immediately to $1 million ARR?
No, it was I did a presentation at SaaStr on this where it was called 3 slow years, 3 painful and slow years to $1 million ARR. And then just really zooming out from there after that, I think a year after that, we hit our first $1 million, hit our next million. And then a year after that, hit our first $1 million quarter. And then I think 6 months after that, like our first $1 million month. So then it just started to accelerate from there.
I want to take a zoom in maybe from the moment between your LinkedIn intro days to like getting to that $1 million in revenue. It sounds like you had some AE churn. It Sounds like, we've talked a little bit about the BDR experience, and like you said, 3 years. We don't have to replicate the whole SaaStr talk, but I am curious about the journey. Maybe
Yeah.
we start with the AE churn. Talk to me about that piece.
The AE churn was really interesting. It was the first time I had to fire someone, for example. If anyone has had to terminate anyone, it's not a fun experience. And your first one, you always remember, right?
Mhm.
And man, there was so much struggle in getting to the right AE model. I can even walk through them almost one at a time. I won't name names, obviously, but the first person, great sales rep. I actually worked with him previously, so I had high confidence in him. And it was pure, there wasn't product market fit or go to market fit at that time in a realistic way. And so he was almost doing a favor working for us. And then he went and got a great job somewhere else. I was like, hey, you should probably take that job. That was about 9 months in. And there's no hard feelings. I was like, that is a great opportunity. You should go take it. Sorry, I wasted 9 months of your life. Then shortly after, we had another person who, it was kind of a combo. This time it was more of a combo of the wrong fit as an experience set and individual, great person, but just the experience set was wrong. And we noticed that right away, because I was still selling. We were starting to get product market fit and go to market fit. And it's just the wrong personality type, wrong experience type. Happy to jump through that.
Yeah, I'm curious. Can we add some like rough revenue gates, like where we at like
Yeah.
$1,000 in MRR, $10,000 in MRR? Because
Yeah.
I think I'm curious on like, I'm wondering, did you hire like I don't want to throw SAP under the bus here, but like, did you hire a big name rep from like SAP, Oracle kind of thing into a startup that's 12 months old at 5K monthly recurring revenue kind of
Yeah.
thing?
Yeah, for sure. I'll talk in ARR from an ARR perspective. Let's see, when we had that first rep, our total ARR of our company was probably around 250K ARR. And we were closing deals, like a normal deal was like a 5K ARR deal all the way to maybe 15. And we were collectively at that time throwing up about, let's call it 30 a month across me and anybody else in that new rep or anyone else helping. It's about 30K ARR per month. So that's roughly where we were at that scale with that first rep. So we had some of it cooking. You could be like, yeah, we got 200-ish K of revenue, can close about 30K a month, but let's go bump that up to 50, 75, 100K a month. But that was roughly what that first rep was like. Even that second rep, we were still around that same level. The first rep was actually someone I worked with at Box, very talented, and he could go sell anything except for us because there was nothing good to sell. And so when I knew he couldn't make it, yeah,
you're not even like, it's still almost an extension of the product team, right?
Yes,
Like,
it should have been. Exactly. You're totally right. And that's what it was. Like, we should not have hired anyone at that time. And again, that's why I apologized to him at the when he was leaving was, hey, sorry, wasted your time. Hopefully it's a good learning experience for you, but you got a great job coming out of this, which was great. He's still in the job now.
that's awesome.
Yeah. And
The
the
reason
second
I bring that up,
yeah, go ahead.
and sorry to keep cutting you off. The reason I bring it up is I have this conversation with founders a lot, especially because they come to us and they're like, hey, we want to outsource our sales development, this and that, and I want to hire an AE. And I'm like, well, where are you at in revenue? And they're nowhere near $1 million. So they're nowhere near 500K. It's like, if you're sub 500K, if you're sub 100K, like, it's you, it's the founder, it's the CEO. And to your point, you tried outsourcing it, didn't work very well. You tried,
That's right.
I'm not outsourcing it, but you tried hiring for it, even with an internal hire with somebody you had worked with before, somebody familiar, obviously a good salesperson, not going to be successful because you don't know enough of the strategy to point them in the right direction and say this. And
Yes.
I'm not doing this to pick on you. I think a lot of us, myself included, I'm like probably more guilty than anybody has been guilty of outsourcing the strategy to other people unintentionally.
That's totally right. And there's always, and you're right. Every time I talk to a founder, it's the exact same thing. It's like, oh, I'm so busy. I wish I could actually outsource what I'm doing with customers to someone I can hire. And literally every founder says that. And I did the same thing. I made the mistake twice, hired in the next rep. And again, actually, to your exact point, it was about 600 or 700K ARR when finally our third rep worked. She's still with the company. And that was really the tipping point. And I was essentially still selling all those deals between those first two reps. So I still had to do all that work anyways and manage two people successively. And they both didn't work. So I was actually putting more stress on myself for even trying to do that. Right. But that third rep finally worked and she did an amazing job. And I could tell like right away, I was like, this timing's right. She's selling it better than me. And literally within a month in, I was like, you take it, you got it. I think we're ready to roll. And her numbers exceeded what I was doing in the trailing 6 months. She was already beating those numbers in her first 3 months at the company. And so that was when I knew, hey, she can do it. And we now are getting much closer to go-to-market fit.
Fantastic. What changed in between the kind of 250K where the first rep didn't work out, say 500K where the second rep and 700K where the third rep finally made it? I doubt it was just this one person. She does sound exceptional, but it probably wasn't her that got you to go to market fit. And so what changed in between, those revenue bands?
Yeah, there's a convergence of a few things, but the biggest thing was at that time was the go-to-market fit finally starting to land. I remember I went and met with Steve Laughlin, who was the founder of Relate IQ around that time, and it turned into Salesforce IQ. And he sat me down in a room just on this whiteboard. He was like, "Ted, this is exactly what you need to do. This is what we did at Relate IQ. Is hey, we went for a specific target market. We said, hey, we're going 0 to 100 employees." That use Google Apps. You literally can't sign into our product without Google Apps. And that is who we're going to sell a CRM to. And that was how they got to this repeatable motion where Salesforce got so envious, they ended up just buying them for, I think, $360 million. And he was
in
like,
stock
hey,
too.
Yeah, that's probably good.
Like $1 billion acquisition by now.
Yes, exactly. Maybe not the last couple of weeks, but hopefully he sold some before that. But essentially, at that time when this rep came in, this third rep, that we essentially start to nail in our persona, and that was a big part of our go-to-market fit. So we said tech companies, sales enablement crowd, sub 250, 300 employees. Mostly based in SF. And speaking of outreach earlier, I remember that was a lot of their early market. Same thing with Relate IQ, that was the early market. So very similar type of profile. And then the product was actually starting to hit even more. And so I think we hit this critical mass of features just because it took some time. We only had a few engineers, but we started to hit this critical mass of features where people were like, oh, you know what? This actually has most of the features we need and even more features than what's on the market. And our market's also unique in the way where it's a very feature-driven market historically. And so it's just a matter of time to get the amount of features we needed. So the convergence of those two, hiring the right person as well, who was capable of it, really set us off on a different trajectory. And with that, we were able to raise our Series A and really set us off on the higher growth venture path that we're on today.
Gotcha. So it was kind of, if I summarize, you kind of had that initial product market fit, but the time in between was just learning from customers and just you had to build out from MVP to like first full product, full sellable product that really helped kind of bring the full market or give you access to the full market.
Yes. Yep. And it converged all around the same time. And like we even reset our whole culture around that same time too. I almost remember this like it was yesterday. It all happened in 2018. It was like we reset our culture, got the right team members on board, got go-to-market fit, product market fit. And it was like this light bulb went off that year. It's like, hey, you actually see the light at the end of the tunnel. Whereas 2016, 2017 is just a nightmare, like working out of a dingy apartment, like couldn't figure anything out, running out of money, stressed out with your seed investors, to everything just starting to click in 2018. And if we want to jump in this part of the story, the third rep worked, but our fourth and fifth reps actually didn't work, which was another story. But then after our sixth rep, that actually started to work really well. Everything past then has actually worked. Obviously, a few people with performance issues since then, but for the majority part of it, of our team, it has actually worked really well.
So talk to me about trying to clone that third rep that was successful. It sounds like you tried 2 other times. I mean, not obviously not cloning. You're not trying to create Dolly or anything. But why did they work out? Why did the third rep work out and the fourth and fifth reps didn't
Yeah,
work out?
that was more, what's interesting. Now this is getting to the science of selling, where, so we had this third rep who did an amazing job, and she was like our model rep. And then our fourth and fifth reps, they had great sales skills, but they weren't the right type of seller for our product and our market. And that was so that was kind of figuring out, hey, what type of seller do you want to actually go with? Like some companies, for example, can rely on heavy product sellers that know the features, the functionality, great at demoing, and they'll be very successful. There's some other companies that could have, like when I was at Box or even at Cisco, before Box, and I was selling myself, they were very business value driven. Like our best rep at Cisco, couldn't name a switch number at Cisco, whereas I knew every single piece of the spec sheet, and she was the best rep by far. She was way better than me. And she literally couldn't even name a product SKU. And so that was the one thing we realized at WorkRamp, is that there's a specific type of seller that worked really well here. And the fourth and fifth reps were great sellers, but they just weren't the right type of sellers for our market too. And so what we realized worked really well at WorkRamp was someone who was very process driven, that they knew how to run a really tight sales cycle. Because in our category, it's actually a kind of a difficult sales cycle. You have multiple different buyers. You have some people with power, some without power. You have multiple personas as well that you're selling to, and you have to kind of put this all into one package and drive it forward within a sales cycle. And actually didn't reward people that were great product sellers. And so I originally thought, hey, if someone's a great demoer, they're going to be able to sell the crap out of WorkRamp. And that was not the case. Like that third rep, she was not super strong in the product, but was very strong in the process and also sharing the value of what our product could do, but wasn't even that strong in the product itself. And so that was where we had messed up on the fourth and fifth rep, is, hey, they didn't have the skills around driving the right process, but then had other skills, but they weren't as in tune with what we needed for our market. And so we've tried to replicate that ever since. That's a big thing we look for in interviews is, hey, are you process-driven salesperson?
I interviewed Justin Welsh. He built a huge team over at Patient Pop a number of years ago. And, he had built I think at the time, 60 to 100 reps of AEs. And he said the number one thing he looked for in a rep was past experience with the sales motion that they were selling. And so he didn't care necessarily about the industry. He's like, I want to find somebody who's been slinging 20K annual deals, doing stuff over Zoom, flipping proposals. It's like a 2-week sales cycle. I want somebody who's comfortable with that motion more so than somebody in the industry. Because I think they were hiring they were in the medical space, I think. This was a few years ago that we did this. And Patient Pop, you can look it up because I'm not going to guess. And they were I feel like they were hiring experienced medical sales professionals into this really short sales motion. And as you can imagine, it didn't go very well. So is this kind of your experience here, hiring people for?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I'll actually show a positive example where I remember, so one of our best sellers now, I was about to axe him in the interview process because he actually came from he was selling services, basically selling outsourced technical services. And everyone we had hired before that was cookie cutter SaaS. It was just they've sold SaaS software. They know the process, they know how to demo it, et cetera. And this person had sold essentially services. And I was like, no way we can hire a service salesperson to even get this. When was the last time they demoed a SaaS product? And it was maybe 7 years ago in one of their early jobs. I think he had worked at Salesforce previously. And so I said, you know what? Let's have him on a role play. And I want to understand his process skills and how he actually goes about selling in a sales cycle. And so we did basically experiential based interview where you had to run through a sales process with us, even including the demo. and he just nailed it. And so we hired him, and he's done an amazing job. And and we were like this close from not pulling the trigger on it. And I'm so glad we actually tested the experience there. And again, it was about not what we sold. It's not that he had to sell SaaS. He could have been selling used cars. But as long as he had a very good process, that was essentially what we were looking for, process-driven approach. And that's really worked out for a lot of the reps that we've hired.
I'm always my mind's a bit boggled by companies. I understand why you want to hire somebody who's sold software before. It breaks my head a little bit that software companies won't consider services, especially like I know a bunch of reps in sales, and I won't say anything about any particular companies, but I've known some reps that were just mediocre sales reps in an amazing territory with the absolute hotness of a product, and they crushed it and their numbers were. And then you talk to this other person who's been selling services. They haven't closed nearly as much, but they've been like, they are 10x the salesperson of this other rep because they've been selling a much harder, undifferentiated service offering. And like, I would argue, I've seen a number of cases where this rep has gone in and just crushed it compared to, somebody who's used to having product market fit. Because going from like extreme product market fit, you're basically, I don't want to say you're an order taker, but like it is so much easier than selling undifferentiated services.
Yes. I'll actually tell you a really funny story. This is just from 2 nights ago. One of our best commercial sales reps, he used to sell gym memberships, and he came up through our BDR ranks, and he's just crushing it right now. And selling gym memberships, you're always hustling, right? It's like no matter what time someone comes in the gym, you're selling them that membership, right? And I called him late at night because I saw a message on Slack for a deal review. And so I just called him late at night, and he didn't answer. I was like, it's probably a little bit late, but he texted me back. He's like, on a demo. And I was like, yes, I'm glad you were on a demo. But it was just exactly what I was picturing him doing. I mean, it wasn't too late. I think it's like 7:00 or something. But it's exactly what I was picturing him doing is, hey, taking that hustle he learned in a previous life, and it's very process driven in that world too. And then the BDR ranks were very process driven, and he's taken that into his current AE ranks. And yeah, I was just like, kudos, thank you for being on a call. I bet you no one else in the company is on a call right now on a demo at 7:00 at night. So it was just great to hear. I was like, give him a clap back on the text. So
that's awesome. I would get you to share his name and give him the accolades, but I don't want to send all the recruiters after him.
So that's right. I'm gonna keep it our hidden gem. Yeah.
A gold star.
Yes.
A tiny golf clap to you, sir. Man, this has been a really fun conversation. I want to talk, we've kind of talked about, go to market, product market, some of the early mistakes made with the BDR team, the AE team. I'm curious, is there any piece of the journey that we missed? I know you had some notes on what we wanted to cover today.
Yeah, I would say probably the biggest part of the journey that was maybe, I'll reframe the question. Probably is more unique to us was we specialized a little bit late. I know that's probably the anti-predictable revenue model, but it actually worked out pretty well for us specializing late. Again, it gave us a better view of the world and gave us some more time to digest, like, hey, what should we actually do here? So I'll give you an example. So there was a year, I think it's in 2019, and maybe even half of 2020, we essentially just had AEs doing everything. We still had some of those BDR struggles, but AEs were doing new business, they were doing upsells, and they were doing renewals. And so we had an AE, for example, who did, I think, like 1, 2 in new / upsell business, and then another like $1.5 million or 2 in renewals. So I was like, how do you even sleep at night? And he made a ton of money that year. But it was actually really good because we had a smaller team. This was kind of like our tiger team of sellers who I would just sit in the kind of sales pit back when we used to have offices in SF. And we just got so much feedback at that time because we could go to kind of one single person and figure out, hey, what's going on in this whole life cycle? We had CSMs at the time too, but they didn't carry any numbers. But these kind of all-star sales reps did everything. I was saying that was really helpful in that part of the journey. And then we finally specialized into actually getting a renewals team, which essentially is our CSM team. Then we got a implementation team on the CS side. And then we just started specializing after 2020. But that's one big thing I would recommend is like, hey, don't specialize too early, because one, it will balloon your costs. You might mistake like process things that are broken in the process from what's actually happening out in the field. And so if you kind of just have one person doing a lot of stuff, you can see like a full view of what's actually happening straight with your customer without a lot of noise in between, by having different segments tell you different things. And so that was probably one other big thing I would bring up in that journey is don't specialize too early. I'm glad we waited a little bit before we specialized.
I love that. I don't think it's anti-PR at all. I think it's using, I mean, I think the concept of specialization wasn't invented by Aaron in the book Predictable Revenue, right? Like specialization in the manufacturing process, like, I don't know, Henry T. Ford, like probably before then. So I don't think it's anything new. I think it's the right idea applied in the wrong circumstance. Because I've talked to people with a $5,000 ACV, and they were trying to do outbound. They're like, man, I hate to break it to you, but outbound doesn't work. Like, it's too much. I'm like, yeah, of course it doesn't work at 5K. Like, the sale is so quick. If it's a one call close, inserting an SDR in between just extends, is going to double the life of your customer, double the life of your pipeline, of your sales cycle. It's going to double the cost because you've got an SDR and an AE, and it's going to, like, the longer your process is, like the longer it takes you to get the customer to buy, the more of them are going to drop off. And so it adds all these unnecessary steps. And so I love that comment. I love that 15K range is probably like on the small side of being appropriate to specialize. And for you all, it didn't work. I bet you if you were selling 25 to 50K deals, you start to get into maybe a spot where it works, and certainly above kind of 50K, it starts to get a little bit more. But like even us, we used to have an inbound rep handle all of our inbound requests. And we would have customers complain to us that when they're inbounding, they'd have a great conversation with the SDR. Then they have to have the same conversation with the AE. And so we actually took the SDR out of the equation. They're not doing the discovery call anymore. We have it booked directly with the AE, and it shortened our sales cycle by about a week.
Yep.
And it probably increased close rates, and it cut our costs. So
yeah, and I wrote this LinkedIn post on this the other day, where I think in this new world, all the efficiency metrics are getting rewritten, like the CAC metrics I'm seeing, or even the LTV to CAC ratios we're seeing. I can see the whole model being upended right now, where all the ratios are going to change. So I'm really curious to see where that takes specialization and also quota attainment. It's going to really, I think, disrupt, with all these companies pushing profitability now or positive free cash flow. I think we're going to see all of it disrupted from a specialization and efficiency perspective.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think one of the metrics I like to follow, David Scott always posted on his blog, forentrepreneurs.com, FOR entrepreneurs.com. It used to be called the Pacific Crest Survey. Now I think they got bought by KeyBank, and they do a SaaS metrics survey every year. And since 2016, 2015, then the amount, let's take a guess here, Ted. How much in 2015 was an average SaaS company spending to acquire $1 of ARR?
Oh, I mean,
now, this is
at that
total
time,
sales and marketing, total CAC.
Yes. Yeah. I would say, well, the benchmark even we try to get to right now is $1.20 all in sales marketing. I bet you at that time, maybe 2 to 3 all in. What was it at that time?
In 2015, it was 92 cents to
acquire was okay
CAC. Yeah.
Okay. Now, and what is it now? Okay. So it's much lower than you're saying.
It was much lower.
Okay. Got it.
In the last year, I think it jumped to like 160.
Got it.
The last report I saw.
Yes.
So,
okay.
Like,
I was totally off there.
Well, I mean, I think you're pretty close. And I think if you are all at 120, like that's phenomenal.
Oh, we want to get there. We're not there yet, but that is our that's our new benchmark. That's the standard. And we're post Series C is, hey, that's a new metric on the board deck. Like people are looking at it now. Whereas no one asked about it 6 months ago. They would wonder what they would care less.
I think the best thing that's going to happen for sales, marketing, customer acquisition, revenue teams is that fewer companies without product market fit are going to be investing in go-to-market motions. It's going to reset the airwaves. It was almost like there were 400,000 radio stations playing in the San Francisco area, and now it's going to cut back to like 120,000, or maybe 400 to like 100. There's just a lot less traffic in our emails and on the phones. Like there's going to be more AEs that have quotas, but they're not going to have the same capacity to prospect as an SDR. And so I think in 2023, if I had to guess, I'd say we're going to see email reply rates go up. We're going to see call to connect ratios go up. We're going to see like deals progress a little bit faster because some of those companies that maybe shouldn't have raised, but it was a really excited market. They raised a ton of money. They hired a ton of salespeople. They were huge companies without go-to-market fit. They were just burning cash inefficiently. And I think once that noise kind of settles down, I don't mean noise as in like they're being terrible. I'm thinking of like a signal noise. It's going to be a lot easier for those with product market fit to like really bust through.
Yeah.
So yes,
or even the ones, even the ones like Salesforce who in their last earnings, I think they said they spent in Q3 like 3.3 billion to make on sales and marketing to make only 323 million net ARR, which is just crazy. And that burn multiple is just nuts. And so even great companies have to recorrect this.
Totally. I think the core message is we get a couple of tough quarters in front of us, but ultimately the outlook is going to be relatively positive once we kind of get through the reset.
Yep. Love it. It's like like Jason Lemkin saying, he's such a positive guy on the market with that. Yeah.
100%. Ted, thank you so much for coming on the show. If people want to get in touch with you, if they want to check out WorkRamp, they want to work for you, what's the best way for them to get in touch?
Yeah. So you got workramp.com. You can LinkedIn me as well, or send me an email, ted@workramp.com.
And who's your best customer if they're listening and they're like, maybe I should buy WorkRamp?
Oh, dang. There's so many good customers. I would say, well, I'm thinking ones I could say. I would say Intercom is a great customer where they were actually one of our earliest customers as well, still with us. They have great use cases around us. And then that's on using our what we call employee solutions product. And then on the customer side, some really great for a customer education product, really great customers like a Hopin or like a Quantum Metric doing really cool things from a customer education and learning perspective.
Cool. So if you're in sales enablement, you may want to go check out WorkRamp, because I think you also power like outreaches.
Yes, outreach is a great one too. Platform. Yep, exactly. So yes, if you're sales enablement, learning and development on the employee side, we're a great solution there. And then on the customer and partner side, also there as well too. If you need help training your customers and partners.
Love it. Ted, thank you so much for coming on the show. Everybody, thanks for listening. We'll see you all next week.
All right. Thanks, Collin. Talk soon.